The lobby of the Caldwell building was still half lit when Stephen arrived, the cleaning crew working their way down the marble corridor with slow, industrial patience, their cart leaving a faint chemical lemon smell on the cool air. She was 40 minutes early. She knew she was 40 minutes early. She had calculated the margin the way she always did, adding buffer where Diane would inevitably find a reason to subtract it. And she had used the extra time to confirm that the audio-visual setup in the third-floor conference room was working, that the seating placards were centered on the table, that the small folded card beside the water carafe that said Diane Renwick, Director of Client Partnerships, was placed where Diane would see it immediately and not have to ask. She stood at the side entrance now, her coat still damp from the walk from the parking structure 3 blocks away, watching the rain come down on the empty side street. It was the kind of rain that made everything look slightly more serious than it was, the kind that turned puddles into small windows, reflecting the amber of the streetlights. She held her umbrella loosely in one hand and was thinking about nothing in particular when the man appeared. He came around the corner from the direction of the main boulevard. No umbrella, no coat with a hood, his jacket already darkened across the shoulders. He was moving at a pace that suggested he had already accepted the situation, not hurrying, just walking through it. And when he reached the narrow overhang above the side entrance, he stopped and stood there the way a person does when they are grateful for any ceiling at all. Stephen looked at him for a moment. He was somewhere in his mid-40s, she guessed, with the kind of settled posture that suggested he spent a great deal of time being still. His jacket was plain, no logo, well cut, but not in any way she could immediately name. His hands were at his sides. He was watching the rain. She held the umbrella out toward him without stepping forward. "Take this," she said. "I'm going inside." He looked at it, then at her. "You just came from outside." "I know where I came from," she said. He took it. He did not make a large event of it. He said thank you in the flat, direct way of a person who meant it exactly as stated, and she pushed open the side door and walked in. She did not look back. Upstairs, the third-floor conference room smelled of fresh flowers and catered appetizers and the particular nervous energy of junior staff trying to look settled. Stephen stood at the edge of the room and did a quiet inventory. The projector was casting the firm's quarterly overview slide onto the screen at the far end. The platters from the caterer were arranged on the credenza in the order Diane had specified in a Tuesday email. The seating, the lighting, the arrangement of the room's 5 round tables, all of it was exactly as she had spent the last 3 days ensuring it would be. Carol appeared at her elbow with a glass of water. Carol was Stephen's desk neighbor of 4 years, a woman with a quiet voice and the observational instincts of someone who had learned to watch rooms rather than be watched by them. "The AV cable you sourced from your own bag saved this event," Carol said. "I hope someone thanked you for that." "The room works," Stephen said. "That's what matters." Carol looked at her the way she sometimes did, with a measurement in it that was too careful to be casual. "Diane arrived 10 minutes ago. She rearranged the seating on the main table." Stephen picked up her water glass. "I'm sure she had reasons." The dinner took the shape that Stephen had expected. The room filled by 7. The noise rose to the particular pitch of a professional gathering where no one knew quite how formal to be. Diane moved through the tables like a person who kept a precise internal count of who was watching her, and adjusted her energy accordingly, her voice carrying the easy, unhurried authority of someone who had trained herself over many years to sound as though everything was already decided. The project overview came midway through the main course. Diane stood at the front of the room with a pointer and walked through the quarterly deliverables, her voice smooth and informational, and Stephen listened from her seat at the second table and heard, without any particular surprise, the way certain things were described. The Mercer account restructure, which Stephen had led from the initial brief through the final framework, was attributed in Diane's narration to a senior approach developed by the partnership's team. The risk mitigation analysis, 12 pages and 6 weeks of work that had required Stephen to come in for 3 consecutive Saturdays, appeared in the overview under the heading of Cross-Functional Collaborative Output. The client feedback survey, which Stephen had designed, distributed, cleaned, and analyzed herself, was presented as a recent initiative. None of this was announced as a correction. None of it came with a pointed look in Stephen's direction. It was simply the way Diane told the room what had happened that quarter, and the room received it the way rooms do when the person speaking has authority and confidence, and the posture of someone who is always simply telling you facts. At the table to Stephen's right, a junior staffer named Tyler, who had contributed 2 sections of formatted charts to the Mercer framework, received a small nod from Diane when she mentioned the partnership's team's analytical work. Tyler accepted it with the gratified bewilderment of someone who had not expected to be in the story but was happy to be there. Carol, seated 1 chair to Stephen's left, pressed the knuckle of her index finger lightly against the back of Stephen's hand. It was brief. It said everything it needed to say without requiring any of the words that would have made the room uncomfortable. Stephen drank her water. She finished her portion of the main course. When the dessert trays arrived, she helped distribute them from the credenza because one of the caterer's assistants appeared overwhelmed and the tray was going to tip. She was at the credenza, sliding a platter of small chocolate tarts into a stable position, when Diane appeared beside her. "Stephen," Diane said in the pleasant, slightly lowered voice she used when she wanted to sound confidential. "The Hollis brief. I need it done by Thursday. The original timeline was too conservative." The Hollis brief was a 60-page analysis of a client's restructured communication strategy. It was due at end of quarter, which was 6 weeks out. Thursday was 2 days away. "I can have a draft by Thursday," Stephen said. Diane smiled at her, the exact smile of someone who had expected this answer and was satisfied by it. "Good," she said, and turned back toward the main table. Stephen finished arranging the tray. The dinner ended at 9:30. The catering staff cleared. The junior employees gathered near the elevator in small clusters, processing the evening in the low-voiced way of people who were not quite ready to go home but not quite ready to stay. Stephen collected the audio-visual cable from the conference room, coiled it, and put it back in her bag, because it was hers. Outside, the rain had thinned to something lighter but still present, a fine, persistent mist that the streetlights turned faintly silver. The covered walkway along the building's east side stayed mostly dry if you walked close to the wall, and Stephen was doing exactly that when she heard footsteps behind her and turned to find the man from the side entrance. He was holding her umbrella. "I was looking for someone to return this to," he said. She looked at the umbrella, then at him. "You didn't have to wait. I was inside. I had a reason to be inside." He held the umbrella out toward her. "Thank you. It was a practical thing to do." "It's a $40 umbrella," Stephen said. "It kept the suit dry," he said. He had a slight dry emphasis on the word suit, as though he found the situation mildly absurd, which she appreciated. They walked the length of the covered walkway side by side, because it was the natural thing to do. The mist moved around them. A taxi hissed through a puddle on the street. He told her his name was Marcus. She told him hers was Stephen, and he received it the way people did sometimes, with a small pause of recalibration. And then he said, "Unusual name for a woman," in a tone that was curious rather than challenging. "My father wanted to name something after himself," she said. "I was what was available." He smiled. Not a performance. Just the small, brief rearrangement of a face doing what it does naturally when something pleases it. They reached the end of the walkway, where it opened onto the parking structure entrance. He stopped. She stopped. There was a beat of something in the air between them that was too quiet to name and too present to ignore. "Thank you again," he said, "for the umbrella." "You already thanked me," she said. "The first one was reflexive," he said. "This one, I mean." She walked into the parking structure with the folded umbrella in her hand and did not let herself look back, though she was aware in the way that the back of the neck is sometimes aware of things, that he was standing at the end of the walkway for a moment longer than he needed to. The hotel connected to the Caldwell building by a sky bridge on the 4th floor, a detail Stephen had known abstractly but had never needed to use. She knew it now because on Wednesday morning, 40 hours after the dinner, she was crossing that sky bridge with a coffee in each hand, Carol having failed to receive the notification that the lobby cart below was closed for a plumbing repair. And she saw Marcus on the other side of the glass corridor. He was in the hotel lobby standing near the large abstract painting by the elevator bank, and he was not doing anything in particular. He was looking at the painting the way a person looks at something they have already made up their mind about, but are still willing to be surprised by. He saw her at approximately the same moment she saw him, through the glass, and there was a brief, mutual acknowledgement of the situation's smallness, the coincidence, the way a city sometimes folds its corners. She pushed through the sky bridge door into the lobby. "You're staying here," she said. "3 more days," he said. "You work next door." "I work next door," she confirmed. He looked at the 2 coffees in her hands. "One of those is for someone else." "It is," she said. She was already past him toward the elevator. She had a 9 o'clock. At the door to the elevator, she turned back because something felt unfinished. "The rain is supposed to stop on Friday," she said. He looked at her with the particular steadiness of a person who was deciding how much to invest in a sentence. "That's too bad," he said. She did not fully understand what she felt on the elevator going up. She finished her coffee before she reached the 4th floor. She found Carol at her desk and set the 2nd cup down without ceremony. Carol looked at it, then at Stephen's face. "You took longer than the cart being closed accounts for," she said. "The sky bridge is a reasonable alternative route," Stephen said, and opened her laptop. Carol picked up her coffee and said nothing else, which was one of the things Stephen valued most about her. The Hollis brief consumed Wednesday entirely and most of Thursday morning. Stephen worked through lunch both days, the Caldwell building quieter at those hours than it ever was in the morning rush, the floor developing a slightly hollow quality that she had grown used to over 4 years of choosing to stay when others went for air. The brief was 63 pages by the time she finished the executive summary. She sent it to Diane at 11:47 on Thursday morning, before the deadline Diane had named. Diane's response came at 2 in the afternoon. 2 sentences. The second one said that Tyler would be taking point on client-facing delivery of the Hollis framework, and that Stephen should copy him on any further development. It did not thank her for the brief. It did not comment on the brief at all. Stephen read it twice. She set her phone face down on the desk. Carol had gone to a client call at 2:30. The floor was thin at 3. Stephen sat with the closed phone and the 63-page document open on her screen, and the quiet particular to empty offices, and she was not sure exactly what the sensation in her chest was. Something that had been holding a familiar shape had shifted slightly, and was not quite the same shape anymore. She went to the corner coffee cart at 4 because she needed air, and the cart was the reason she had for getting it. Marcus was there. He was ahead of her in the line, ordering something he appeared to already know, speaking to the cart operator in the short, specific sentences of a person who had been here before. He turned when she arrived, and the expression on his face was the same one from the walkway, from the lobby, the one that did not perform itself. "You look like you've had a hard afternoon," he said. "I've had an efficient afternoon," she said. He received this the way he received most of her deflections, which was to simply let it stand without pressing it. He stepped slightly to the side so she could be closer to the cart. The space between them narrowed. She was aware of his jacket sleeve near her coat sleeve and the small warmth that proximity carries on a cold October afternoon. "What are you here for?" she asked, and meant it the way it was asked, about the city, the trip, the reason for 3 more days in a hotel connected by Sky Bridge to a building she worked in. "Evaluation," he said. "Of what?" He looked down at his coffee cup for a moment, then back at her. There was something in his eyes that was weighing something, and she had the feeling of being on the receiving end of a decision that had already been made. "Potential," he said. "I'm evaluating potential." She held her own cup. The afternoon traffic moved on the street beyond the cart's small canopy. He had the ring on his right hand, she noticed, because his hand was near hers on the cart's narrow ledge, a plain band of what looked like white gold on his middle finger. She filed this away with the mild interest of someone cataloguing small details about a person they have found interesting without meaning to. "Do you always go about it without announcing yourself?" she asked. He smiled. "Usually," he said. She walked back toward the building. He walked alongside her for half a block and then turned toward the hotel entrance. She did not stop walking, but she noticed that the afternoon felt slightly warmer than it had been when she left, which was the kind of thing she did not generally allow herself to dwell on, and so she did not dwell on it. It was the following morning, Friday, when she heard it. She had come in early again, which was not unusual. 40 minutes before the floor filled. She was at her desk with her coat still on and her first coffee cooling beside her keyboard, reviewing the document queue for the quarterly presentation. The presentation was scheduled for the following Monday. She had built the slide deck herself, sourced the underlying numbers, formatted the appendix. The deck was saved in the shared drive under Diane's project folder, the way everything was. She heard Diane's voice from around the corner of the office partition, near the small conference room that Diane used for informal calls when her door was closed. Diane was speaking to someone, and the door was not all the way shut, and the ventilation gap between the partition and the ceiling carried sound in certain directions on quiet mornings. Stephen had learned this in her first month at the firm and had spent 4 years treating it as a neutral fact, the way one treats any feature of a building that has no moral content. She was not listening. She was reading her email. The words came to her anyway. "The renewal committee won't approve another term," Diane said. "The position doesn't justify the cost at her level. I've drafted the non-renewal letter. It goes to HR after the quarterly presentation." There was a pause. Another voice, quieter, something agreeable. "She's thorough," Diane said, with the faint, concessive tone of someone granting a minor point that doesn't change anything. "But thorough isn't strategy. We need the Hollis work wrapped and delivered. After that, the calculus is straightforward." The other voice said something Stephen couldn't make out. "End of quarter," Diane said. "Roughly 6 weeks." Stephen sat very still. Her coat was still on. Her coffee was still cooling. The document queue was open on her screen and she was not reading it. The ventilation gap above the partition was the same neutral architectural feature it had always been. She had not gone looking for this. It had simply arrived the way some truths arrive, through the gap between the wall and the ceiling, in the particular quiet of a Thursday morning before the floor filled. She sat with it for a long time, long enough for the coffee to be fully cold. Here is what she did not do. She did not go to Diane's door. She did not speak to HR. She did not call Carol, who would not arrive for another 30 minutes. And she did not begin drafting the argument for her own continuation that she could feel forming at the back of her throat, like something structural. She opened the quarterly presentation deck. She opened it, and she read it from the first slide to the last. 37 slides. She found her own work distributed through it, the way iron filings are distributed through a handful of sand, recognizable to someone who knew what to look for, invisible to someone who did not. The Mercer framework, the risk mitigation analysis, the client survey, the Hollis findings, condensed to 3 bullet points on slide 29. The Hollis slide had Tyler's initials in the properties field. She looked at this for a moment. Then she opened the Hollis brief itself, the 63-page document she had completed Thursday morning, and she began, very quietly, to extract the findings herself, to reframe them in the format the slide deck needed, to build a version that was accurate and sourced and cited, with the underlying data visible in a way that Tyler's condensed 3 bullets were not. She worked through the morning. Carol arrived at 8:45 and found Stephen still in her coat and brought her a fresh coffee without being asked. "Did you sleep here?" Carol said. "I came in early," Stephen said. Carol looked at the screen. She could see enough of it to understand what Stephen was doing. She set the coffee down carefully, the way you set something down when you don't want to make a sound, and she went to her own desk without asking why. By noon, Stephen had a complete supplementary analysis, 14 pages, properly formatted, with every source documented and every figure tied to the original client data. It was the honest version of the brief, the version that showed what the work had actually required and what conclusions it actually supported. She named the document Hollis Quarterly Analysis, Complete. She removed her own name from the author field in the document properties. She saved it to the shared drive under the Hollis Project folder, not under her own name, not under a folder anyone would check before Monday. Just there, present, accurate, available. Something she had done well, left where it could be found. Then she went to lunch. Monday was clear. The rain. Diane's dinner had started the week in, had gone, exactly as someone had said it would, and the morning came in cold and high and very bright, the kind of October morning that made the Caldwell Building's glass facade look briefly cleaned. Stephen arrived at the usual time, not early, and rode the elevator up with 3 colleagues who were talking about the caterer for the presentation and whether the coffee would be good. The quarterly presentation was held in the 4th floor event room, which was larger than the 3rd floor conference room and had a small elevated area at the front where the presenter stood. The firm's senior staff occupied the round tables. The junior staff filled the outer ring of chairs along the walls. Diane was already at the front when Stephen arrived, standing near the projector in the practiced ease of someone for whom front of room was a native habitat. Carol found Stephen near the door. "Owen Chastain is here," Carol said in the particular voice she used when she was conveying information she expected to land differently than it appeared to. "The Hale Group liaison," Stephen said. "He brought someone," Carol said. Stephen looked at her. "I don't know who he is," Carol said, "but Owen introduced himself to Diane this morning, and she treated him like the floor was suddenly uncertain." The event room settled into the low murmur of organized anticipation. Stephen took her seat at a table near the center. She set her notebook on the table and her coffee beside it. She could see the front of the room clearly from where she sat. Diane introduced the quarterly overview at 9:15. She moved through the slides with the easy, proprietary confidence of someone presenting their own record. The Mercer framework, the risk analysis, the client survey findings. Slide 29 came up, Tyler's initials in the projected header, 3 bullet points under the Hollis heading. At the table 3 rows ahead and to the right of Stephen, a man leaned slightly forward to look at slide 29. His jacket was plain, no logo, well cut but not in any way she could immediately name. His hands were on the table, and one of them had a plain band of white gold on the middle finger, which was the hand closest to her, and which the light from the projector caught in a way it would not otherwise have. Stephen looked at the side of his face for a moment. She looked at the ring. She looked at the ring, and then at the face, and then she understood, in the specific, total way, that understanding arrives when the information was always available, and has simply now arranged itself correctly. That the man who had stood in the rain at the side entrance of this building 7 days ago, the man she had given her umbrella to, the man she had walked a covered walkway with in the dark, the man who had said he was evaluating potential and had not explained what that meant, was sitting 3 rows ahead of her at a quarterly presentation hosted by the firm that employed her. She sat with this for the full length of slide 30. At the front of the room, Owen Chastain stood. He had a particular way of standing that indicated he had something to say and was going to say it in a measured way. He was a compact man in his early 50s, precise in his movements, and Diane's smile at him was the specific smile of someone managing uncertainty with professional warmth. "Before we move to the financial summary," Owen said, "I'd like to introduce someone who asked to attend today's presentation in a listening capacity." He turned to the table where Marcus was seated, and the angle was clear, and the room's attention followed the turn. "Marcus Hale," Owen said, "founder and principal of the Hale Group." The sentence landed in the room the way a stone lands in still water. Not loudly. The ripples simply moved outward in all directions at once. Diane's smile stayed in place for approximately 3 seconds through the active effort of a person who had trained herself to never let it collapse in public. Then it shifted slightly into something more cautious, the smile of someone recalibrating. Her pointer, which had been hovering near the screen, came down to her side. Marcus did not stand. He nodded, a brief acknowledgement, the gesture of a person who was comfortable receiving a room's attention without requiring it. His eyes moved across the assembled staff in the unhurried way of someone who had already spent a week taking a different kind of inventory. They moved to Stephen for a moment and held there, and she felt her chest do something she did not have an immediate word for, something that was simultaneously recognition and a question she was not yet ready to answer. Owen remained standing. He had a folder in his hand, and he opened it with the particular care of someone who has been waiting for the correct moment to use what it contains. "The Hale Group's parent contract renewal with this firm is scheduled for end of quarter," he said. "As part of our evaluation process, Marcus spent the past week here informally. We reviewed the quarterly documentation during that time." He looked down at the folder. "We found some discrepancies between the deliverables attributed in this presentation and the underlying documentation in the shared project files." The room was very quiet. "Specifically," Owen said, "the Hollis quarterly analysis. The version in this presentation is a condensed summary. There is a complete analysis in the Hollis project folder, 14 pages, fully sourced. We reviewed it this morning." He paused. "The document has no author named in the properties field. Marcus, do you want to speak to that?" Marcus looked at Stephen. He was not performing anything. He was simply looking at her the way a person looks at someone they have already decided something about. "I was at this building the evening of the quarterly dinner," he said. "I was outside briefly, without an umbrella." He said this to the room, but he was still looking at Stephen. "I observed the preparation for this event over the course of the week. The Hollis analysis in the shared drive matches the standard of the original 63-page brief, which I also reviewed. The work is consistent." He paused. "I'd like to know who authored it." The room turned collectively, in the way rooms do when there is only one direction for them to turn, toward the table where Stephen was sitting. Carol, seated one chair over, had her hands folded on the table and the expression of someone watching something they have been waiting 4 years to see. Stephen did not look around the room. She looked at Marcus because he was the one who had asked. "I did," she said. The sentence was short. She did not dress it. She did not expand it. It was simply what was true, and she said it in the level, unornamented way she said most things. The room held it. At the front of the room, Diane set her pointer down on the credenza, very carefully, with the precision of someone who was focusing very hard on a small physical task in order to manage the larger surrounding situation. The seating card with her name on it was still on the presentation table, the same card Stephen had centered there 7 days ago, and it was the small, wrong kind of prominent now, a label in a room that had just been reordered. "The Hollis brief was a team effort," Diane said. Her voice was smooth in the specific, audible way of something that is working hard to remain smooth. Owen looked at her. "The 63-page brief is attributed in the document properties," he said. "Both drafts have identical metadata, the same author field." He looked at the folder again. "Except the field was cleared in the versions saved to the presentation." Diane opened her mouth. Something started to form. It did not complete itself. Her voice came out a half step shorter than usual, with a paused beat in the middle where something had gone, the particular cadence of a sentence from which the scaffolding has been removed. "The attribution process for collaborative deliverables is," she said, and stopped. Nobody helped her finish it. Carol, at Stephen's elbow, exhaled through her nose in the quietest possible way, the exhale of someone who has been holding something for a long time and has just been given permission to set it down. Marcus stood. He did not make it an event. He simply stood the way a person stands when they are finished sitting and have somewhere to be. "The Hale Group will extend the parent contract," he said. "End of quarter renewal, as scheduled. We'll want to discuss the scope with the relevant team." He looked at Owen. "Get the staffing structure to me by end of week." He looked back at Stephen one final time, and the thing in his expression was not a declaration. It was a notation, the small, precise acknowledgement of someone whose record is clean and who is now simply confirmed. "Thank you for the loan," he said. The room did not entirely follow this. Stephen understood it perfectly. After the event room cleared, it cleared in the slow, particular way of a room where something significant had happened, and everyone was processing whether they were allowed to speak about it yet. Junior staff gathered near the door in clusters of 2 and 3, voices low. Owen Chastain spoke briefly with Diane at the front of the room, a conversation Stephen could see the shape of without being able to hear the words, and Diane's posture through it was the posture of someone standing very straight because she had decided that was the only acceptable option. Carol appeared at Stephen's shoulder with both their coats. "I'm taking you to lunch," she said, "and you're going to tell me everything, including the part about the umbrella which I have been watching you not mention all week." "I mentioned the Sky Bridge," Stephen said. "You mentioned the Sky Bridge," Carol agreed, "and left out the entire reason you were on it." They rode the elevator down together, Carol with her coat buttoned and her expression one of warm, assembled satisfaction. The lobby was bright in the October morning light. The floor was the same polished marble it had always been, the cleaning crew's lemon smell already replaced by the neutral cool of a well-ventilated public building. Near the main entrance, Marcus was standing with Owen, the folder now tucked under Owen's arm, and Owen was speaking in the low, efficient register of someone wrapping up logistics. Marcus was listening with the same quality of attention that Stephen had registered at the coffee cart, the kind of attention that made the person receiving it feel that their words were being treated as worth the space they occupied. Owen shook Marcus's hand, nodded to Stephen, and walked toward the revolving door. He was through it and gone in the efficient way of a man who had done what he came to do. Marcus looked at Stephen. "You cleared your name from the document," he said. "I cleared my name from the document," she said. He was quiet for a moment, in the way that he was quiet which was not empty. "You thought no one was looking," he said. She thought about this. The ventilation gap above the partition, the coffee going cold on her desk, the 63 pages, the choice she had made at the document properties field, which had not felt at the time like a choice at all, only the next thing that was true. "I was going to lose the position anyway," she said. "It didn't change what the work was." He looked at her the way he had looked at the painting in the hotel lobby, the way a person looks at something they have already made up their mind about and are still glad to be confirmed. 6 weeks is long enough to restructure a reporting arrangement, he said. Owen will follow up with specifics. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know," he said. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The simplicity of it was its own kind of statement. Carol, standing slightly behind Stephen's left shoulder, made no sound. She was looking at the ceiling with the specific expression of someone who is being extremely careful not to interfere with something. Stephen looked at him. She was aware of the folded umbrella in her hand, where she had been carrying it since she collected it from her bag that morning. Its plain black fabric and aluminum ribs, a $40 object that had done its small particular work, and was now simply something she was holding. "You were evaluating the firm," she said. "Among other things," he said. The October morning light came through the tall lobby windows in long, flat angles, catching the marble floor and the glass of the entrance, and the specific ordinary fact of two people standing in a building where, 1 week ago, one of them had been outside in the rain. She did not ask what the other things were. Some questions answered themselves in time, and she had learned, over many years of quiet endurance, to have patience with the questions that were not yet ready. She shifted the umbrella to her other hand. She turned towards the revolving door. He fell into step beside her, not because she had indicated he should, but because that was simply where he was, in the unhurried, settled way of someone who has already decided where they are going and is content to arrive at whatever pace the moment asks for. They stepped through the revolving door together, out into the clean October air, into the light. She was not performing anything. She was simply there, with the folded umbrella in her hand and the morning all around her, belonging to it completely in exactly the way she always had.